Something about ancestral work, if you're a new practitioner, especially if you're from America, especially if you look like me, and especially if you come from people that you don't agree with, because that could be anybody, okay? But especially for people who look like this and have American background. One of the things to remember is that privilege, it keeps you from seeing the real world. What is really going on? The pain, the suffering, the hardship, the things that you might not want to look at, but are there. It may not even be that you wouldn't want to look at them, because a lot of practitioners go to ancestral work to like do justice work for what has happened before. Clean up the mess, you know? Me too. One of the things that came up in my live stream the other day was that ignorance is bliss. And normally I don't talk about like other people's comments while I'm in a reading, but that one, while I was in the reading, I looked at it and I was like, we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk about it, because if you come from ancestors who have privilege, wealth in society, privilege in society, which can show up in a lot of different ways. Okay, you're straight. Every arrow that's straight wobbles when it goes through the air. Okay. Also, things like looking like this in America, wealth, being a man, being a white woman, a lot of different ways that privilege can show up, right? Each and every one of those corners of what that privilege would look like for you, that is a place where you are kept from wolves. Privilege is to, I don't want to use the word elevate. How do I explain that? Hide. That's maybe a better word. It's to hide that group of people from a certain kind of consequence, which also means to hide a certain group of people from a certain sort of suffering or pain. Now, if you're born into privilege, it's not necessarily your fault, because you didn't get to choose which bazinga you came out of and what family you're a part of, right? I think if we could choose, a lot of us might have chosen differently. However, we don't get that choice, so we're here. If you're starting ancestral work and you're looking at those different pockets of privilege and what they mean for you, your relation to the world, looking at what kind of suffering they could keep you from, that also means those privileges are keeping you from wisdom. Wisdom is paid for with innocence. In this case, innocence as a child, because you don't know any better, right? But as an adult, as you grow up, now you have the choice. Am I gonna remain ignorant? Okay, because innocence, when it is a choice given to you, then turns into ignorance. Or am I gonna show up? Am I gonna learn about this? And am I gonna do different? I'm gonna do better. I'm gonna help to elevate myself, etc. If that's you and you're working in your ancestral practice, you come from privilege. One of the things that you've got to learn how to do, and I normally don't speak in like you have to do this, but one of the things that is really, really beneficial, okay, if you're someone who comes from privilege and is working on an ancestral altar and is really like at the beginning being like 5 years early, okay? 5 years is still a while, but also that's still, compared to a long life, kind of early. Have to actively work against those ancestors so that you can start to look at the real world that is around. The wisdoms of magic, they come from innocence being taken from us. And so you have to actively look at, because if you do not actively look at it, those ancestors who started and or were participating in perpetuating and holding up the structures that allowed you in this lifetime to receive those privileges, that's a lot of generations of ancestral work. Still magic, okay? So you have to actively work against them and say, you're not allowed to blind me. You're not allowed to keep my eyes off of the things that would allow me to see the truth and earn the wisdoms. For a lot of us, okay, now we're getting into like the pockets of the shadow stuff. For a lot of us, at least for me, there's a lot of trauma in my family that I inherited, okay? So I'm not saying that we're not human, because we are. People who come from privilege still experience suffering. It's just a different kind of suffering. But when it comes to the real world, I'm going to air quote that, okay, because we all live in the real world, but like, how do I say that? Privilege puts an illusion on your eyes that things are not as bad as they really are. I will never know what the lived experience is of someone who looks different than me, is a different person in the world, identifies differently within the different privileges that I have. I will never know what that lived experience is. How could your eyes look at that then? You know? If it's not your lived experience. That's just what it is. However, you can go back and witness war that upholds that privilege, because that is what privilege is. It is created by war, and then it is upheld by war. It is upheld by the fighting and the battles and the pain and the suffering of other people who may not necessarily be a part of that privileged demographic. So if you're looking at that ancestral work, you have to actively go against those people, which probably you're the first person in maybe a long time to have the courage, bravery. Some people might call that stupidity, but I don't think so. There's a lot of like fearlessness, lawlessness, recklessness, okay, that goes into being that sort of crazy, because that's crazy to do that. To look at an entire lineage of people and be willing to start an altar and say, yeah, I'm going to do this differently. You're insane. I am too, okay? That's just what it is. Good for you. Because that's crazy. Okay. Just keep it in mind. I've been working with new practitioners through the years, helping them get ancestral altars set up. And recently it's become a theme again, like helping people get ancestral altars set up, and or helping to get people into new positions with their ancestral altars after they've already kind of like started their relationship with them. Because starting your relationship with your ancestors is kind of like introductory, right? This is who I am. Who are you? We got to talk about it a little bit. We got to get to know each other a little bit more before we get into sort of like the more specific stuff, but not really. It starts from the get-go, right? The conversations get more nuanced or like heavy on that the longer that you're in it. But it's not fun. That is not a fun process. To look at the world and realize, not only do I come from people who don't care about that, they actively use that suffering to uphold where we come from. Now I've got to come and correct that. I've got to correct them. I've got to correct myself. Being corrected in the spirit requires that you are a very, 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 very sound person. It is to sit and be humbled by things that you cannot see. Okay, just let that sink in for a second. The lessons in the spirit are very, very stretched sometimes also. Sometimes they take a while. Also stretched, they're going to stretch you out. We got to get some limber, right? We got to get stretchy. We got to get, if it bends, it's not going to break. Right, okay. I was just sitting here thinking about that, because I'm doing my work in that correction kind of always, but right now there's like a bigger conversation going on between me and spirit. Necessary one that's kind of closing out a chapter for me, so that's good. Other thing about that sort of space of like correcting them and understanding under the truth, you're supposed to be ill-equipped for that. Your lineage set you up to be ill-equipped from that if you come from privilege. You're not supposed to have the tools all the time. You innately know what to do, right? But in terms of like elders being around to help, or like your family being around to help, or literally any help, okay, sometimes even from the spirits, because sometimes I've been in the middle of a lesson, the spirits are like, we're not going to tell you, you got to figure it out. Recognized incompetence and ignorance is sort of a big one when it comes to privilege. Actively being like, oh, we don't see that. Sometimes the spirits are going to let you flail a little bit to figure it out. That's just what it is. And good. Okay, needed. Third ancestral altar, when you come from any kind of privilege, is definitely something that it's a little bit risky. It's a little dangerous, and not maybe in the ways that you would. It's not necessarily dangerous or risky to your position in the world. If you're going to learn the lessons through that, then sure, yeah, if that's what spirit needs you to do. But it's not always externally risky or dangerous, but internal. You are never going to be the same person. You're never going to look at the world the same. And you're going to be asked to carry a witness that probably for hundreds of years of generations in your family has not been carried. Which means you're going to be misunderstood. And that's just what it is. That's the way kind of that it needs to be. I don't know all the specifics, but that's what spirit has on my heart right now. So there's a responsibility and a power that comes with knowing that kind of stuff. And if people are not willing to do the work to open their eyes, as much as we might not like it, they're not supposed to hold that power and responsibility because they haven't earned it. Okay, so if you're going to earn it, just be ready to go and correct them, because you're not just learning about it on a worldly level, on a generational worldly level. You're learning about it as a spiritual practitioner and the spirit, with the magic and the spirits and what it cost the spirits to uphold that privilege. And that is an entirely different conversation. Gratitude, reverence, and love to you. Thanks for listening to me about my brew. Hopefully it helped you. Happy new moon. I'm pretty sure that it's already past the new moon as I'm filming this. And happy solstice too. Oh my gosh. Have an incredible night of darkness. I'm so excited for the rise. The solstice this year feels so like honorific. I think that's a good word. Yeah. I'm gonna go enjoy that and And we'll keep working because I'm in the middle of a lesson right now, so I'll be in it. Talk to you soon. Also true.